Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class today. Jason is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. If you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call, 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line, 712-770-9418. 712-770-9418. I'm Vincent Finelli, and I just wanted to mention that if you know of any professions that you think will be impacted by what we coined as the corona panic, that's the term we coined right here at USA Prepares, I'd like to know what your thoughts are. What jobs, what occupations, what professions, what passions will be impacted by the corona panic? Delighted to be broadcasting today with my dear friend, Steve Elkins, Off the Beaten Path. It's on Republic Broadcasting Network, Sundays, 7 to 9 p.m. Welcome, Steve.
Good morning, Vincent. Good morning.
Steve, you are an ER nurse of 27 plus years, an ICU nurse of 27 plus years.
Yeah.
You are a traveling nurse. That means that you are hired by different hospitals, and you go there for a contracted period of time. So you get to see more than one hospital. So
correct.
In Springfield, Missouri, there are two major hospitals. One is called Mercy, or Mercy Less, as Dr. Shuley says, and the other would be Cox. So if you worked in the hospital, you'd probably work at one or the other of those, but you could work at both of them.
Yeah.
And get to compare, and in other cities and states as well. What would you like to talk about today?
Well, yesterday was a big day. I took over John Stadmiller's show. I normally do a co-host on a Monday, but he was on a road trip, and so I took the show. And I wanted to touch, we can talk about it, the coronavirus. Everywhere I look, the media is saturated with coronavirus, COVID-19 virus. The boogie man is coming for you. And I'm seeing a lot of unnecessary panic, and I want to talk about that a little bit. I want to talk about looking at the numbers, and that's what I did last night. I broke down the numbers of our total population here in the United States and the world. And the media is doing their job. And I think you and I have talked about this, that where this was manufactured, made, I don't know. It is man-made because every year it seems like we have something new that just kind of pops up. So new virus, DNA just materializes on the planet. It replicates and transforms and this, and then you've got a pharmaceutical that says, hey, we've got the cure for a vaccine. So we are kind of setting ourselves up for another vaccine, a yearly vaccine on this COVID-19. That's my prediction. I'm standing by it because I look at the pattern of what's going on with the flu vaccine, the ineffective flu vaccine. So I turn, everywhere I turn, I see coronavirus, taking the news. I saw a newspaper saying coronavirus takes over the world. And it showed these guys in these white hazmat suits with goggles, and they have these special-looking guns. They look very sci-fi. It's amazing that we have that technology because maybe, I guess somebody theorized, we were going to live on a planet that was going to have to be decontaminated because something was going to happen here big. It's just amazing that this stuff all kind of pops up. Hey, we've got the tool for that. I don't believe that's by accident. I do not believe that's by accident at all. Saw yesterday on Fox News what it actually was called, the Virus Cruise Watch. It showed one of the Princess Cruise Lines coming into the San Francisco harbor, getting ready to go underneath the Golden Gate Bridge, which is a beautiful sight, by the way. But it's the buildup. It's a buildup of what they seriously want to happen. There is a purpose. There are many objectives. My personal feeling, there are many objectives to the coronavirus, why it has come onto the scene right now. And one of them you and I have talked about, and I've talked about with many other people, and they're saying, you know what, that's definitely a possibility here. We're lied to all the time. We've been lied to on weapons of mass destruction and a lot of other things in history. Our whole history is just riddled with lies. So when I started thinking about this whole thing, we look at Wall Street's getting hit real hard. Everything is getting hit. Commerce is getting hit worldwide, especially here in the United States, because we don't manufacture anything. And you know that. As for the work you do, you're always trying to find parts, and you're saying, well, I can't find that now, I can't find that, because it's not made here, it's made in China. Well, a lot of things just aren't matching up, and that's where we need to use some common sense and some serious critical thinking when we talk about COVID-19. Now, I'm looking at the Baltic Dry Index every day, and on a break here, I'll take a look at what it is. It's gone up every day. Every day it's going up, 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 up. Wall Street is tumbling. Huge losses. We're looking at probably about $5 trillion lost in the last week and a half. Now, if Wall Street is losing, and it's supposed to be a consumer-driven market, which it is not, by the way, because you wouldn't need quantitative easing or plunge protection if it was a consumer-driven market, but we're not manufacturing, and China is. So if China is shut down, much of their manufacturing, probably 50% or more, and we can see that on satellite photo that the smog cloud over China is not as big as it used to be, so they're not manufacturing. So if they're not manufacturing, they're not loading up the tanker, those container ships, to go anywhere in the world, especially the United States. So then why is the Baltic Dry Index continuing to go up? It should follow the market, Wall Street. If it goes up, it goes up. If it goes down, it goes down. They hold hands. So none of this is making sense, and nobody's pointing this out. I'm probably the only one who's pointed out that Wall Street shouldn't be where it is. It's been overvaluated for years and years and years, and I do believe that this COVID-19, it is a real thing. It is a real pathogen. But it's also, its purpose has many purposes, but one of them is basically essentially a reset of Wall Street to bring back the markets to a normalcy because it's been overvaluated for so long. It's the reset button. I think it's also a reset button for many other economies around the world. It's going to be used as an excuse. Donald Trump can't say, well, I've been lying about all the economic numbers. I've been lying about unemployment numbers. I've been lying about how manufacturing is coming back, store closures. We know all about those. We've talked about them. So if all those things he told us were true, then we wouldn't be seeing what's happening here on Wall Street. The bottom is falling out. There must be a scapegoat. There must be somebody to blame. And that is China, Wuhan, China, and the coronavirus. It's a perfect alibi scapegoat to say it's not us, it's them. I can't take the blame, and I get back in 2020. So I just want people to start thinking about the numbers. Now, I threw some numbers out. Last night, I got the newest numbers off a special website. I guess it's a data update of coronaviruses. Over 11,000 cases worldwide. Let me get the actual number here. 11,354 confirmed coronavirus cases worldwide, and the deaths as of yesterday were 3,892. For some reason, that has gone down from what the media has reported. They've been over 4,000, 4,500. This is supposed to be an accurate site. In the United States, we had 12 deaths, 13 deaths, then it went back to 12 deaths. I guess somebody wasn't really dead after all, and then they came back, they died again. So then they went to 13 again, and then they went to 22 coronavirus deaths now in the United States with confirmed cases of 564 cases. So in a population of 307, 308 million people in the United States, we've had 22 deaths, and this is a pandemic. In the world population of 7.7 billion people, we've had 3,892 deaths from coronavirus, COVID-19, and that's a pandemic. Now, Donald Trump kind of shot himself in the foot last week when he talked about, in front of the people, American people, where he was surrounded by some of the CDC people, the czars there, saying that more people have died from the regular flu, the one you get that vaccine for, which I don't get, than the coronavirus. Now, he gave some weird numbers, some big variances between 39,000 or 36,000 and 69,000 people have died from the regular flu per year. And there's no alert, there's no alarm on that, and there's no red flag. Oh, my gosh, that's terrible. We're just talking about the United States. So I'm just getting a little irritated. I'm thinking, I think your listening audience is a smart group. I know RBN people are getting it. They're saying, yes, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. I saw Fox yesterday parading around their experts, Benny. They're experts. Dr. Oz, the expert's going to tell us all about coronavirus, COVID-19. Let me give you a little hint. If you want to know really what's going on, then you got to find the true experts, and you're not finding experts in the mainstream media. Dr. Oz is a cardiothoracic surgeon, or retired, or whatever he's doing now, but that's his background. Okay, if I got any bypass surgery, you can advise me on that because that's your expertise. He's not an infectious disease doctor, and we shouldn't be talking to him or listening to anything he has to say. He's nothing but a mouthpiece for keeping this pandemic fears out there. Then they had another woman they paraded around. Her name was Jennifer Pinfors. She's a board-certified radiologist. That was their expert. Now, I've worked with a lot of different disciplines. I don't call the kidney doctor when I have a heart problem on my patient. I call the heart surgeon or the cardiologist. You don't have an electrician come in your house and then tell you he's going to work on your plumbing. That's how that works. If you really want truth in what's going on, they need to bring in the infectious disease doctors, and I've met these guys. They are some of the sharpest people I've ever met in my life, the smartest people in the room. I kid you not. They know all about pathogens, diseases, everything you can think of. They're very smart people. That's who you want as your experts on these panels. Not a bunch of talking heads to bring up the fear on something they have no business of even talking about. Vincent, I'm treating this coronavirus the same way I would as I do the regular flu. We coming up on a commercial break yet or not?
We're still good for a couple minutes. Go ahead. Okay.
Well, I wanted to treat this the same way as I would the regular flu, and I wrote out some things here that are really, really important. Now, hand washing is so important. You got to understand that bacteria and germs came out of poor hand washing, disease, filth. If you have a good policy of hand washing, you're going to be healthy. Bacteria thrives in poor hygiene conditions. So hand washing is essential. We should already know that. I'm not sure why people don't know this, but you want to wash your hands frequently, soap and water, warm water. And if you can at that time, you need to use hand sanitizer. That's okay, acceptable. But then don't wash your hands in the bathroom and then touch the handle as you're leaving again and recontaminate your hand. We've talked about that. I'm amazed how many people don't.
Back. Hold the thought. We'll be right back. Steve Elkins is with us, and we're talking about sanitation. You know, Steve, as I've read the news and I've looked at the images across the internet and my personal experiences, what I've seen is cart after cart loaded with toilet paper, bottles of water, no soap. And I can tell you that the stores where I have been, there's plenty of soap. It looks like it's the aisle that people avoid, or the shelves that people avoid. There's plenty of soap. It's not like people are even thinking about soap. Just water, toilet paper, and paper towels.
Yeah,
and
amazing,
masks.
Isn't it? Amazing.
Yes,
amazing.
it is.
Yeah, masks, and they've run out of masks, but I guess there's been a big order, and now the government's going to be supplying masks and things. But let me back to my list real quick. I'll go through this list, and we can break down some of the things. But the hand washing is very, very important. I can tell you in a hospital, going in between patients, I can't tell you how many times. I never had time to sit down and count how many times I wash my hands. I wash them so much that they get chapped, and I have to use hand cream to bring back some kind of moisture to my hands itself. It gets so cracked. But that is essential. We need to be washing your hands. We should be anyway. It's amazing. Diet, a healthy diet, of course, that's always really important. Hydration, making sure we're not talking about Cokes and sodas and beer and stuff like that. We're talking about hydration, water, electrolytes, making sure you have proper electrolyte balance. The coughing and sneezing. There's one procedure that you never hear about this anymore. It's called the vampire cough, where you actually cough into your elbow or sneeze into your elbow. But, covering your mouth, your nose if you're sneezing, Kleenex, wash your hands directly after. It's this touching other things after you've already sneezed into your hand and coughed into your hand, the spreading of viruses. My wife was home today because somebody came into the office sick, and finally they said, well, you always tell us if we're sick we need to stay home and you need to practice what you preach. And so she did go home, but she's infected everybody already by now. My wife has to stay home today because she's not feeling well, and she's a very healthy individual. So, if you're sick, stay home. That needs to be emphasized. Getting vitamin D through sunshine or supplemental, wherever you can. Sunshine is always the best. Vitamin C intake. Exercise helps boost your immune system. Decrease your stress level. That is one of the biggest ones. People who have stressful jobs will actually have an impaired immune system. They're more vulnerable to pick up infection and disease. So, decreasing your stress level, proper sleep, proper rest to repair the body. Avoid these crowded places. This is the same thing I do for the regular flu. Avoid these crowded places. I mean, right now in the winter months, a cruise ship, wow. You got containment, you've got people. All you need is a couple filthy people who don't wash their hands after using the bathroom to go to the buffet, to use those serving spoons, and now they've contaminated the entire cruise ship. And we see that every year with the norovirus. This is very similar to the norovirus. It actually is found in fecal matter, also in respiratory droplets. But you're talking about a perfect medium here. Bacteria trap, a cruise ship, the airlines with their recirculated air with the respiratory droplets, another bad situation to be in. You just need to skip these places. You need to skip eating out, skip the buffets, pull back the variables that actually could bring you to getting some illness or disease. We need to do these things. And this should not be a panic. This should be a common sense thing to say during these months, you shouldn't be doing these things, and you're actually going to be a much healthier person. Going back down my list here, I made it up this morning, fresh in my head. Repairing your body with the sleep, that's really important. Decrease your stress level. The close quarters, like I said, these cruise ships, you can't even hardly give a cruise away right now. The prices are dropping drastically. They are getting hit billions of dollars in lost revenue, so are the airlines. They canceled. I looked today, they canceled the Indian Wells tennis tournament, and that's outdoors. So this panic has gone to if one person in the crowd over here has COVID-19 positive, him just taking normal breaths could infect this entire stadium, I guess. And so we've gone to the extremes here now. And like I said, the mainstream media is doing their job to really make a panic out there. And I just want people to use some common sense and critical thinking. And look at those numbers I just gave you. Those are not pandemic numbers that you should be fearful. I see people walking around with masks in the stores. And is it because they have an impaired immune system? If it is that, I understand that. If it's just because they fear germs in the air, then we've created a whole new diagnosis of germophobia.
Okay, Steve Elkins and I will be right back after bottom of the hour commercial announcements. Steve Elkins is with us, and we're talking about the corona panic and what you need to know in order to survive. Steve?
Yeah, let me say some other things here. I've got it all written out here. I don't want to miss any of my bullet points here. But right now, billions are being lost in commerce and billions are being made using fear. Now, they're the vultures on Wall Street who leaven us. Because, by the way, they always seem to be out, the vultures, the big kingpins here. They have all the money. Your millionaires, billionaires always seem to get tipped off when to get out of the market. It'd be nice to track these people to find out when they pull their money out, because that's when you should be pulling your money out also. But they always seem to escape it because they're always remaining wealthy while everybody else is poor. 40% drop, 50% drop in the market, and they always seem to be doing really well. By purpose, that's all very purposeful. Driving down the market and then buying in and then then massaging it, letting it get back up to where it should be again, and start the whole process over again of making millions and millions and billions of dollars. So billions are being lost in commerce, and billions are being made right now using fear, F-E-A-R. It's being used. Mainstream media is doing their job. I'm a big believer, Vince, on first reactions. If you have police that come to somebody's house and they question a suspect and the person acts suspicious or doesn't show reaction like he should, the death of somebody, well, that's a big tip-off. You might have some involvement here. The emotion itself. And I start going back to the expression on George W. Bush's face when he walked in and told him at the school when he was reading the story, My Pet Goat, to the children there that the World Trade Center had just been attacked, bombed, and the Pentagon had been attacked also. His facial expression told us a lot. It told me guilt. It told me or involvement. Same thing is going on right now. This virus has an objective. It is a reset for Wall Street to bring it back down to where it should have been in the first place without taking any blame and excuses. It's going to be blamed on China. And I saw another headline. It said 15, they were thinking in theory of how many people will die here. This is a projection, actually. 15 million people in the world will die from the coronavirus, the COVID-19 virus. They'd actually made the prediction. 15 million people will die. That's a pretty big number to pull out of your rear end there. I had nothing to back it up, nothing at all to back it up. It's just a big number to scare people into believing that this is what they say it is. And that's what I'm stressing here now is to use some common sense. Treat this like you would the regular flu. Do the right things. If you have a decent immune system, you're going to fight this off if you get it, just as you would fight off the regular flu. But if you take these steps I've told you already, you're going to be in pretty good shape. An immune system is there for a reason. If you don't use it, you lose it. If you've ever been bedridden, and I've been there in bed for a while, and you get out of bed that first time after a week in bed, and you're kind of weak on your legs, that's called muscle atrophy. Your immune system is very much the same, but if it's not used, it's going to become labile, not effective in fighting infection. So you have to use it. We are bombarding our bodies, Vincent, with all these vaccines, which are making our immune systems labile. They're not very strong. We need to pull away from all these patches, these quick fixes that they keep telling us that they're fixes for to prevent us from getting and use our immune systems as they were intended. We've got 18 states now that have closed their schools. So, that panic has started already. And I understand that they don't want it to spread in this respiratory droplets in kids. And they've just created a huge panic here because now you have to have parents to stay home with the child. So there's loss of income there. This whole thing it spirals out of control. And it didn't have to be this way. But, again, this has many purposes. One of the other purposes, other than the economic reset button, would be control over the people. Restricted travel, maybe even the mandatory vaccines. They're pushing that flu one as a mandatory. If you want to work here, you got to take the vaccine or you have to wear this mask. Your children, the elderly, they're pushing the vaccines, are being pushed very hard, which is, I'm glad to say that I found an article yesterday on LouRockwell.com where the CDC admits they cannot say that vaccines do not cause autism. I think that's on the RBN website. I had it posted yesterday. So all the times they were saying, no, our vaccines don't cause autism, they can no longer say that because the evidence is there. I can tell you a handful of cases I know personally. A normal child got a vaccine, became very silent the next 8 hours. The next day, weren't speaking much at all, and then they were smacking their face and showing signs of autism. Many, many cases, too many to count. And I hate to, it breaks my heart to even talk about those damaged children from a vaccine because all the bunching up of the vaccines themselves at one time. But there are many, many purposes of this other than the reset, the control of people, the restricted travel, mandatory vaccines, our loss of freedoms, our loss of rights. We are going to be corralled and controlled because they're going to tell you, you need to be fearful of this. And I haven't seen Donald Trump's facial expression to say, wow, I'm really worried about this, I think what I see on his face is, yeah, I know what it is. It's the reset. It's the reset for the economy. I know it. That's what it is. But, hey, we can use it, and it's going to work out really well for us to start it over again, because quantitative easing and plunge protection, we can't do this any longer.
You waiting for me?
Yeah.
Right,
I spit it all out, Vince. I got it all on my... Yep. Oh, another one here. This is got to say this one. Never let a good crisis go to waste. We've heard that before. Never let a good crisis go to waste. Think about the people who are profiting off this right now. Yes, you and I are going to be sacrificing. We're going to have shortages on things we might need to keep our businesses going. I have yet to see it in the hospital. I guess there's enough stock somewhere, warehouses for hospital equipment. I did see some lying yesterday from Gavin Newsom in California saying they have available right now 80,000 beds for patients. Another big number to throw out there to pull out of your rear end, and you can't back it up. I guarantee you, California does not have 80,000 beds. I guarantee you that's a big whopper lie. Kind of like that lie that Biden told last week of 150 million Americans have been killed by guns. Another number pulled out of the rear end. Like I said, never let a good crisis go to waste. But people have to start thinking, using some common sense here, some critical thinking skills, and I think your audience has it. RBN listeners definitely have it. They question everything now. Vinny, I kind of treat my government like I would the cheating ex-wife that you get rid of. You don't keep her. She's lied too many times. Her past always catches up with her, and she can't be trusted anymore. She cannot escape her past. The government has lied so many times. Why am I to believe them now? When you know what the sad part about it, Benny, is when there really is a crisis, the little boy crying wolf all the time for the non-emergencies, when there really is an emergency, people are going to get to the point where I don't believe it now. And when they should believe it, they won't believe it because of the past of lying. Sad situation to be in. We deserve better. We deserve better.
For those who don't know, this is what a conversation on the telephone with Steve is like. This is when we talk every day. It's just like this. You'd have to agree, wouldn't you, Steve?
Yeah, I do. You know what? I'm going to let you take over because this is your show.
Well,
you ask the questions that I will now answer, but other than that, this is your show. I don't want to take it over.
I look at it as 80-20. The experts are 80. I'm 20, just to keep the class moving along. So, Steve, here's a question. And we know about the nursing home in Washington State.
Yep. Right.
It's infected, and it's like the epicenter. It's looking like it's the epicenter of the corona panic. All right. So, would you say a nursing home could be a petri dish?
Yeah, definitely. Almost everybody in a nursing home is at a certain age, beyond 60 years old, and I'll agree with that because the CDC is saying beyond 60 years old, people, your immune system doesn't respond quite as fast as it used to be, and I know that. I'm getting close to that. And when I get hurt, it takes a little while to heal. It takes a little longer. So, yeah, your nursing home would be a prime place. Prime place to start your vaccine program right there, too, as they've done before. Let's give vaccines to the elderly and the nursing home. Let's trial it on them, and because they're so vulnerable, their immune systems, to pick up stuff. Sure, perfect. It's a petri dish. Okay.
And next question. So you're advising not getting the virus vaccine. Is that correct?
I would say no. No, actually, I can tell you how many cases I know. I had a neighbor across the street. I told her before they were actually doing the big run-up to get your vaccine, flu vaccine. She's in her 70s. They want you to take this vaccine before the season. It takes 2 weeks supposedly to get into your system, and then you can fight off the flu itself. But so she did everything right, and she got the vaccine, and she got sicker than a dog. She got the flu. So I'm finding that the elderly in her age group mostly has some other underlying comorbidities also, and I didn't mention that either. That's really important to understand. Comorbidities, 2 or more underlying health problems, that if you were to face something like the regular flu virus or this COVID-19, that your 2 underlying health problems might be very, very potentially lethal and kill you. Did the virus kill you, or was it that it just pushed your other 2 comorbidities to a level where you could not survive? And that's what happens a lot of times. They don't talk about that, underlying health problems, because if you broke this down and you said, well, the guy has AIDS and he got the flu and he died, well, that's a flu statistic now, and that helps their numbers on pitching the vaccine, that everybody should get the vaccine. Didn't tell you that the guy had AIDS, he had this and this, and other underlying health problems that potentiated his death. They don't tell you that because that hurts their case of the vaccine. I got a question for you, Vince. We're seeing all these stadium events that are being closed. Like I said, Indian Wells just got shut down. They're not going to have the tournament. A lot of stuff inside are going to be stopped. I wonder if the COVID-19 will put an end to the LGBTQ Pride Month and all their parades. What do you think?
I surely hope so.
I hope so too. I was sitting here. I hope so too. I just can't. I don't want to turn on. I don't want to see the parades. If they don't take it serious enough to shut it down, well, then you know, because there's a lot of hype there. Like I said, just use some common sense and practice healthy living, people, and you're going to be really, really much better off than putting your arm out there and getting the vaccine. They're going to hit you up again next year. Now, we already know there's 2 strains of this, Vince, and there's L and S. L is being the more lethal, S is the most common, probably more easy to shake off. But they've already set the pathway to the vaccine, which will take a year to a year and a half, expected to mutate and change a few more times, just as the regular flu does, but still pitch the idea that you need to get the vaccine, because if you do get it, your signs and symptoms will be less than if you didn't have it. Now, see, remember, the first thing we were told about the flu vaccine was it will prevent the disease, right? We were sold on a bill of goods that you get the vaccine, you will not get.
Class, I've been watching the Dow Jones Industrial Average during the broadcast, and we've had over a 560-point swing since the opening this morning. And Bob Chapman said to me that when we see swings of 1,000 points in the market, we are in the collapse. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he said. And we've had swings way bigger than 1,000 points for days.
Yeah.
Days. Actually, the last 10 days, we've seen some major swings. Right. And now it's over 560 points for just today. And yesterday it was we were down.
Record 2025 yesterday. Record. Yeah. The lowest single day drop in history. Mm-hmm. Prior to that was 32 years ago. Yeah. Like I said, billions are being lost and billions are being made, Vincent.
Steve, would you say that a nursing home could be a death camp?
Yeah. It could. Mm-hmm. It could.
Class, think about this. If you have a senior in your family, and many of us have been faced with this, you have a choice between going to work and putting your mother or father or that senior member of your family in a nursing home so you can go to work, or taking care of that senior at your home. Mm-hmm. And I got to tell you, the environment isn't as pleasant as home. No. I can tell you the food isn't as good as home, and I'll tell you that I doubt your home smells like pee and poop like nursing homes do.
Terrible.
And I doubt that you would neglect your senior the way nursing homes do. Now, they tell you that they don't neglect their patients, but I'll tell you that what I've seen is they do, because they hire low-wage people to be the caretakers, and they don't hire enough of them. At least that's
Vincent, you make a good point there. And something else I think maybe we should touch on is that I have no love for lawyers. I really don't. I despise most of them. I think the only ones I'm okay with are maybe patent attorneys. But then again, I think they're crooked too. But now you're looking at the perfect situation being set up now with somebody going into in a nursing home that gets this and dies, and now this nursing home is sued. The lawyers are creeping around looking for it to find blame on somebody. I'm going to make a prediction here. I can see this in my little crystal ball, what's going to happen in the future. This thing is not going to be what they want. They want it to be big. It's not going to be. It's going to fizzle out, but they're going to take credit for it. Donald Trump's going to take credit for it, saying it didn't get to the level they expected it to get to, and he's going to take full credit for saving America, keeping it safe, keeping it healthier, and that's why they contained it, and that's why they saved millions of lives, and they'll take the credit for it, but still pass blame to China for what has happened to our economy, our markets. But it also might be also not only is it an economic reset, but it also might be sending the message that maybe we need to not be so dependent on other countries for things that we need on an everyday basis. Why are we allowing China to manufacture medications, antibiotics, antivirals? Why are we dependent on that? Why don't we make them here and we never be in that situation that we could be in a shortage? Maybe this is going to send a message. Maybe it's also going to send a message people need to wash their hands more. I don't know. There might be some good learning lessons out of all this.
There's one classification of a part that if we did not make it, we would be absolutely susceptible to collapse. And that is bearings.
Mm-hmm.
Ball bearings, roller bearings, tapered bearings, sleeve bearings, bronze bearings, any kind of bearing you want to think of. If we didn't make them, we would not survive. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So if you have a computer and that computer's operating, it has a hard drive which has 2 bearings in it. If we didn't make bearings, you couldn't make hard drives. If we didn't make bearings for the fan that cools your computer, we wouldn't be able to make computers.
Right.
If we didn't have bearings, we couldn't have those ramps, those tractor trailers when they unload at supermarkets. They deploy these ramps with like skate wheels on them, and they just roll the boxes down these ramps. They have bearings. Your car, your truck, even your analog clock on the wall has a bearing. Everything has bearings that has moving parts. And if we don't start making those, we will be susceptible to collapse just from that one item. Alternators, generators, starters, lawnmowers, garden tractors, farm tractors, everything you can think of that moves has bearings of some kind. And we don't make them. They come from the Chi-Coms. Now what? That's why the supply chain is in such an awful position, because we don't make the bearings. We'll be right back. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Class, we've assigned as homework watching the television series Survivors. SU Survivors. And that television series was produced by BBC in 1975, and it is available on the internet. Gwyneth Isaac sent me a link, and she said that, yep, she's downloaded it, and she and her son are going to be watching it. Mrs. Finelli and I have been watching it, starting again last night. I suggest you watch it. It is the coronavirus. They don't call it that. But it's what happens to people and their reactions and what they do and how it affects their lives. And so if you want to see what BBC is or has said the rollout of a pandemic would be like, you might want to watch that, Survivors. And we talked about bearings. The MTA, the Metropolitan Transit Authority in New York City, is cleaning their trains and equipment. So there's more than 51,000 MTA employees who are working on trying to prevent the spread of the virus by cleaning, disinfecting touch points, TOUCHPOINTS, touch points, and disinfecting subway cars every 72 hours. So the workers are using bleach, common bleach, to scrub down all 472 stations. That's 6,700 subway cars and 5,700 buses. Their goal is to sanitize anything that a commuter might touch. Now that's a lofty goal. It's actually impossible to achieve. But what the mayor of New York is not ruling out shutting down mass transit in New York City.
Yeah.
Now think about that.
Yeah, amazing.
Now,
let's not forget also, Vincent, this is the Mayor de Blasio that said, we own your bodies, we can give you vaccine, we can put anything we want in your bodies. Don't forget that. Who Bill de Blasio is. Mm-hmm. When he talks about these vaccines and maybe mandatory vaccines and a yearly vaccine on this, don't count that out. This is a guy that definitely would be for mandatory vaccines. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, and what's after mandatory vaccines? Would that be mandatory sterilization?
Well, if we give them that kind of control, we don't push back. We've lost it. They own us. We are dependents. Government is the slave owner. We're the slaves. I don't think we want to go back there.
There's a silver lining in this dark cloud. And I was thinking about this morning. Radio is probably going to be on the uptick as a result of the corona panic. And the reason I say that is as more and more Uber drivers and taxi drivers say no, as more and more restaurant operators say no, as more and more people who come in contact with consumers say they don't want to go to work and touch things that other people have touched, more and more people are going to be home.
Yeah. And
they're going to be looking for information. And so I think there'll be an uptick in radio and, of course, television and Netflix and, in the other forms of entertainment. But I can see that happening. But I can see that casino traffic, although it's not down now because the GDP at the casinos are still there. They haven't figured out that there's a risk at all. I haven't figured that out.
Sure. Those are the kind of people that take risk anyway. I mean, they're gambling money. Most of them don't have money to spend and waste, and those are the gambling types that really don't care about anything. I mean, there's the smokers, there's the excessive drinkers, excessive gambling. They're the addicted to the gambling scene. One thing, Vincent, that I've learned in my years of medicine, and it didn't come automatically. It's something that I had to learn. It was something definitely a learned habit, is that don't panic. And I learned that in ICU. Don't panic. If you panic, you don't think rationally and you don't make the right choices. You make poor decisions. And I learned that when working on open heart patients, when they come fresh out of the OR, they came in, it would be my patient. And if it wasn't my patient, it was somebody else's patient. We act as a team. It's very similar when an open heart comes into the ICU, rolling down the highway, it rolls into the room. We have a team of people. We all step in. We know our part, kind of like a NASCAR pit crew. Everybody knows what to do to get it set up on the monitor, the drains, everything all connected to suction, this and that, and the ventilator, hooked to the ventilator. Everything works out perfect. And you have to learn that. And I learned that. And I'm very, very thankful that I learned that skill set of do not panic, because if you panic or you're fearful, you make poor decisions, poor choices. And that's what my career has taught me, to be able to look at it and quickly, by experience now, figure it out pretty fast before it ends up becoming a serious problem. So, and I look at this virus the same way. I look at it, look at the big picture, I look at the numbers. You know, there's three kinds of lies we've been told in our whole lives here. There's lies, there's damn lies, and there's statistics. Now, how many times have we been lied to about the statistics? Oh, my gosh. The higher the number, the more alarm, the more fear, and the more that somebody has with the objective of controlling you for a purpose. So we got to start using some common sense, some critical thinking skills, and to decipher the truth from the fallacy. And I got to say, that's probably one of the best courses I ever had in college was logic. Deciphering truth from fallacy. And much of our mainstream media, Vincent, you have to agree, is fallacy, fake news, fear news. That's all it is.
Yeah, and doublespeak.
Yes, and doublespeak. And like I said, did you pick up on that, having Dr. Oz as an expert? How many people didn't know that Dr. Oz is a cardiothoracic surgeon? Really, where's the infectious disease guy? I would want the best in their specialty to be talking about something that is in their field. Like I said, I wouldn't have a plumber come in my house and tell me he's going to rewire my house. He's going to do all my electrical work in my house. He's a plumber. You would have the appropriate person to do the job, and having Dr. Oz out there. But see, Dr. Oz has that pull, that weight of authority, but people need to question, wait a minute here. Are you really authorized and really have the expertise to be talking about something? You're a cardiothoracic surgeon. You're not an infectious disease doctor, and that's what these mainstream media people like. They'll pawn off somebody who is an expert who is not an expert. They're paid consultants. They're mouthpieces for the mainstream media and the objective. That's all they are.
No, when you say that, you think about politicians. Now, what particular educational requirements do we have for politicians to make laws? None, right?
None.
We don't. None. Okay. These are people who get by on their smile ability and their likability, but not necessarily on their experience, their knowledge, their intelligence. I know a guy who was elected to a state government, the second highest level, and he voted for food to alcohol, meaning corn to ethanol. And I was with him in my truck one day, and I said, "You voted for that? You voted to grow corn, to make alcohol, to put alcohol in the fuel, to destroy automobiles, carburetors, fuel injection systems. You voted for that? Did you ever take a science class?"
No. Yeah, I know. And those are the people that actually do the legislation, and there are representatives who are doing far more damage than they are doing good in their administrations. It's quite amazing. I in my whole career here, I tell you, you find people all the time. You and I talk about this, going into a store and finding people who are not educated in their position, their job. They're just simply people in place. They're not in their own, their environment. I was at Home Depot, actually at Lowe's the other day, and I asked a young guy this. I put up that FM antenna, a directional antenna element, and I wanted to put a guide wire to the house to keep it from the storms. We have high winds out here, and not to get a whole lot of rocking motion. So I decided to hook it to the house, but to a turnbuckle. And I said to a guy, where am I going to find a turnbuckle? He didn't have a clue what a turnbuckle was. I find people all the time in areas where they're working, and they don't know their tools, they don't know this, they don't know that. We have a whole line of people here that are filling the void, the space, and somebody has never taken the time to teach them, and their parents evidently never taught them anything. Their fathers never did. But I'm finding so many people that are just, if you listen to one person, you're going to make a mistake. You got to find several people, and you have to ask them, or you're going to make some bad mistakes. And it's amazing out there. There's just a whole generation of kids that really don't know anything. They know how to text. They know how to do all that little stuff with their little phones and play the games, but just a generation of kids with really no talents, no life life skills. They're missing the life skills, no doubt about it.
I've encountered some of those types you're talking about at Home Depot, and I've said, well, I've got your name. It's right there on your smock, and you've given me the wrong answer twice now. I'm from corporate headquarters.
When you said that, did you start to smell something? Immediate after,
yeah.
Did you smell something?
Well, I'll tell you what it smelled like. It smelled like a nursing
run right away.
Oh, it smelled like a nursing home. That's what it smelled like. Yeah. In New York City, there is a plan. Actually, they're working on it right now for a severe pandemic, and this plan calls for Rikers Island inmates to dig up mass graves, to bury up to 51,000 new bodies as coronavirus cases increase. That's what's happening in New York City right now.
Isn't that ridiculous?
Well, that's what they're doing.
Well, I know. I'm just saying they're doing it, but that's also giving the message that they expect a lot more, and you're only looking at 22 deaths right now. You see how ridiculous that number is? It doesn't make sense. But people are not using their brains here. They're not thinking this through.
Well, what about this? What about the way we call casualties during, like Vietnam and Afghanistan and Iraq? You know, well, the guy didn't die in conflict. He died by a Humvee accident. Steve Elkins is with us. He broadcasts on Republic Broadcasting Network, republicbroadcasting.org, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Sundays. And the broadcast is called Off the Beaten Path. David in Illinois, welcome. You're on with Steve Elkins.
But you brought up something, a quick statement. You brought up about politicians where they, get their education. When I first started college, private school, our professor said, I have to teach you and the attorneys to be specific as possible. I have to teach the politician majors to lie.
Yeah.
Wow. And that was sad. But I do have a question. I just got out. I already been out to the store this morning, and they were taking pictures of all the empty shelves, which is hilarious to me. If people would just practice what they should have been practicing a long time ago, I think they would have been a lot safer.
True.
But with this getting carried away like something in New York, my opinion is this situation would be overwhelming for the medical staff. So therefore, say if somebody were to come in, or if we're lack of medicine or blood pressure medicine, somebody or heart medication, now that's going to cause them to have more complications. Sure. And that's why I'm worried. And the only other thing I'm really worried about is the way that people live out west. And I've been worried about that for a while.
Out west, as in California?
Yeah, I don't understand how people can walk around and just walk around the human mounds all over the place and the needles.
Well, that's why I left the state. I lived in California for 9 years. The goal was 10 years. I sold at the right time, got the heck out of there, and I just saw the writing on the wall. I'd fought the town council of Santa Rosa, and when they finally decided Santa Rosa would become a sanctuary city, and soon after, Governor, at the time it was Moonbeam Brown, decided the entire state would be a sanctuary state. And I said to my wife, let's get the house ready for sale, and we're getting out of the state. And they are in some serious economic hardships, and it's going to get worse. And you're right. The filth in the streets, San Francisco, even before this whole coronavirus thing, I can imagine right now that Chinatown in San Francisco and Little Japan in San Francisco is probably a ghost town right now, because this coronavirus is being blamed on the Asians. And I bet you right now, I'd love to go just take a picture of what downtown Chinatown. I bet it's a ghost town. I bet it's a ghost town down there. This is killing them. Before that, they had the problem with the defecating in the street and urinating in the street, all the homeless people. even when they gave them porta potties and stuff like that. That was killing tourism. Then, of course, the conferences that San Francisco is always booked for conferences for every company, it seems like, big convention center. And that eyesight of seeing all that filth in the streets, and they have no clue of how to fix it, is, sitting companies saying that I'm not going to use San Francisco for a convention this year. We're going to go somewhere else. They are in serious economic trouble. And, they brought it on themselves with poor choices, poor representation, and I'm just glad I got out alive. To be honest, I got out.
David,
my thing is up. Sorry.
When you were at the store or the stores out in Illinois looking around, did you find that certain shelves were empty or not?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No peroxide, no alcohol, no hand soap, no Clorox wipes. I seen people walking around with carts of toilet paper. I just went there. My wife has to have a medical procedure in 2 days, so she wants to take that time while she's here, just afterwards, to learn to bake some other things. So I got her the other things to bake. We already have we've supplied up for us. I'm not wasting my money on those masks things.
Good.
I do have respirator masks, but that's not why I purchased them. I purchased them because my information was about the toxic waste coming around my house in the evenings during the night, and if there was a spill, we wouldn't be able to get anywhere. So that's what I had to prepare for. It'll work for this, but I'm not worried about this. I'm not wasting my money. Those masks are worthless unless you're sick.
They are.
David, did you find that powdered milk is in short supply?
I haven't been able to get any. We have already powdered cans of powdered milk. I was going to get some more, but they don't have any.
Yep.
Just to be on the safe side, I was going to.
Did you want to hold, Dave?
I don't. I just wanted to ask if him just a minute.
Steve Elkins is with us, broadcaster on republicbroadcasting.org, 7 to 9 p.m. on Sundays, off of the beaten path. And David's with us. David, you had some other thoughts?
Yeah. I just wanted to clarify with Steve, since he was from basically California and the West Coast. So a situation like this that's happening, say if the harsher strain gets out, and then you have people walking around with feces, sharing needles everywhere.
Yep.
There's so many people all the way up and down there. How are they going to contain that?
They won't. That's an excellent point, David. Excellent point. They won't be able to. You'll have a whole class of homeless that will be your vectors. They will be the infected ones to continue to spread it about because they're wandering everywhere, and they're using public facilities. That is the class that will keep this thing alive and keep it going for at least a while until it kind of peters out. You made a good point. Excellent point. You can't contain that. You'd actually have to contain these people, and that's not going to happen. Have like an internment center here, like you did with the Japanese, and you would have to actually surround the area and bring them all in, and of course that's not going to happen.
And my other concern is if you have the politicians the way they believe they want to run the show, and if they want to change the election, I don't think, in my opinion, they would even try to stop them from fleeing out to the rest of the country just to cause a situation of that magnitude. That's just
there's something new that came out today, and I didn't consider that, but understanding how the Democrats despise Donald Trump and they really want him out, they can't beat him on policy. Not that I agree with everything he's ever done right now, but you got Bernie Sanders, a total socialist, who wants to give it all for free, but he can't pay for it. And then you have kind of crazy Joe there. He just doesn't make any sense at all. He's showing signs of dementia, I think. They can't beat him on policy, so we got to get him out somehow. There could be one of the objectives added on to is some way now to remove him through this coronavirus. Now, if you heard the commercial prior to coming back on, they were talking about, he was shaking hands with people who have been in association with somebody who was positive. So they're trying to draw that association that maybe your president might be positive for the coronavirus. There's no stone being left unturned with the Democrats right now. Never let a good crisis go to waste. And where they failed with the Mueller report and everything else, they are trying very hard to find another way to remove Donald Trump. And this may be also playing their plans, one of the objectives I didn't mention, but this may be one of the objectives also, aside of the reset for the economy.
Mm. Well, thank you, gentlemen. I'll let you guys go. Appreciate
it.
David, thank you for calling in.
All right. Bye.
There's David in Illinois. Steve, the market, according to the news at the bottom of the hour that we just heard about 8 minutes ago or so, said that the stocks appeared to be rebounding.
Where are we at now?
We're down 135 points from yesterday.
That's not bad from 500 or so. I just checked on the Baltic Dry Index, and it lost 1 point. It's now 616 from 617.
No,
Again, the number doesn't reflect of manufacturing. It shouldn't be going up at all. It should be rock bottom right now. And the lowest we've ever seen, the Baltic Dry Index, is 290 back in, I'm going to say 2016, and the height of the Baltic Dry Index back in 1987 was 11,793. Can you imagine that? And now we're at 616.
All right. So
is that a mind blower or what?
Yeah. And what I was saying is the news said that the stocks appeared to be rebounding. That's exactly not the case.
No,
it's the opposite. Okay.
Right.
So the market had almost an 1,100 point swing today.
Right.
And now it's down 116 points from yesterday.
Right.
So although the plunge protection team is active and they're scratching their heads trying to figure out how they can turn this around, they tried. I've been watching this all during the broadcast, from time to time, and it's a slope that is just not quite straight down, but darn close.
Another theory I came up with a while back is you've noticed all the mainstream media talking heads here. Have you noticed how many pretty girls they've hired, Vincent? Have you ever noticed? I swear they must stand outside of a modeling agency and hire the pretty women and say, can you read a teleprompter? Okay, you'll do. But I've always had this theory of if you're going to sell a lie, sell it with a beautiful face, a pretty face. My God, you have to say to yourself, would a pretty woman ever lie to you? I mean, they say it with a straight face. And this Dana Perino from Fox News, I mean, talking about the coronavirus, it's the end of all the world here. Terrible, terrible. This is terrible. And then breaks away and talks about if Tom Brady is going to leave the New England Patriots because that's really important stuff here. I mean, they sell you sex sells. We know that. But this pretty face couldn't possibly be telling me a lie on the coronavirus here. Or they're hyping it up. And like I said, billions to be lost and billions to be made using fear. People just use some common sense, use some critical thinking. Think about this for a little bit. Look at the numbers. Don't panic. Practice safe, healthy living lifestyle, and you'll be much better off. Don't succumb. Do not roll your sleeve up for a vaccine because they're going to do it every year. I expect a vaccine every year on this one, too, now. You watch.
I was on the air with Bob Chapman years ago, and we were talking about my term for them is the bald-headed shills. That would be those financial programs that would tell you what stocks to buy and how to lose money faster.
Jim Cramer, right.
I looked up this morning during one of the breaks, Jim Cramer, fraud, because there was a YouTube video where he talked about how he did it. And he was proud of it. And so, bald-headed shills. But Bob Chapman said something very interesting, which ties with what you just said. And he said that he mentioned one of those pretty girls with the short skirts that sat on the stools on those television financial advice programs. And he said she was a hat check girl, meaning she was, she checked hats and coats at clubs and restaurants before she became a TV expert.
Right.
Yeah.
Amazing. Isn't that funny?
It is amazing.
Yeah, it really is. these people that pawn themselves off as being journalists, and they're not journalists at all. They're just very good teleprompter readers, and they're very attractive, very pretty. To sell the lie. You know, something else I didn't mention here when I was talking about lies, 3 different kinds of lies. I didn't add one. I need to add one. You got lies, you got damn lies, and you got statistics, and then you have lies of omission, which is just leaving out the important stuff that you should know. You'll leave it out, and you'll leave reference to that it actually is worse than it really is. You mentioned how government spins a story here. Now let's go back to when Pat Tillman was killed. Okay, you know, he was a hero when he was killed by the enemy combatant, and when the truth finally came out, to found out he was killed by his own troops as a friendly fire, which is another one of those oxymoron words you're talking about, friendly fire. Kills their own troop, executes him. Pat Tillman, taken out. Jessica Lynch, another one. The story drummed up. The rescue in the hospital. It was all tipped off, choreographed. It was videotaped, everything to make it seem heroic, this and this. And thank God she spilled the beans on it. The whole thing, it was just a hyped-up government propaganda of heroism. Amazing. I mean, like I said, the government, they lie so often, and we really need to look at everything very critical, very close, and say, does it all add up? Does it all add up? Are we looking at truth here, or are we looking at somebody's objective, somebody's agenda? Are we looking at a flat-out fallacy?
Violation of campaign promises, flagrant violation, out-and-out lying to those who selected you to represent us. That should be treated as a criminal offense with prosecution. Yeah. Paul in New Jersey, welcome. You're on with Steve Elkins.
Hello, gentlemen. Listen, we have to be honest about who is to be held accountable for the introduction of the coronavirus into the United States. The fact of the matter is the President of the United States is vested with the authority to quarantine through the executive branch, through HHS and the CDC.
Yep.
And all of those people were appointed by Donald Trump. Likewise, we have to be honest. We might be Trump supporters, but we have to put the blame where it belongs. Back in January, I'm sure there were meetings, and he had presidential daily briefings, or let's hope he did, with information provided by our intelligence agency, and that would be the Central Intelligence Agency, headed by the appointee that Donald Trump put into position there, Gina Haspel. Okay. And back in January, you know they were watching, and if they weren't watching, that makes them derelict, but they were watching what was going on in Wuhan virus. I'm sure they saw the same videos that I was watching on the Internet of the draconian response that the Chinese health officials put into effect in Wuhan, and the measures they were taking. And at that point, it was up to Donald Trump to declare an immediate air quarantine and that all flights would be stopped.
Agree.
From China.
And it didn't happen, Paul. And that's what I said from the very beginning. It didn't happen. I would have stopped those flights from coming in. If they did land on the ground, I would refuel them and send them back to China. Nobody coming in from an infected country would land on U.S. soil. They'd be turned around. Those people would never disembark off the airline. That's why I knew the scam. You see, this scam has to happen because they need an excuse to tank Wall Street, to bring it back to normal Wall Street. It's been over-evaluated for a long time now. Quantitative easing, plunge protection, they got to bring it down. They need an excuse. They had to allow this to happen.
Well, I don't see why
he didn't stop it. He didn't want it to stop it. He needed the excuse. He's got the excuse now. Nobody's going to blame him for this. They're going to blame China, Wuhan, China. They're going to blame them 100% for this. And Wall Street, is going to go back up again. There are people buying it. Like I said, billions are being lost. Billions are being made right now from driving down this market. People buying it, the stock's so cheap. Now massage it, get it back up again. They're going to start this whole cabal over again. The same process, start all over again. And 10 years from now, it'll all happen again. Something else to drive it down again, to bring back more money to these power-grabbing people.
Well,
Paul, do you want to stay with us?
Yeah.
You want to stay with us?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. We'll be right back. The Economic House, White House Economic Advisor Larry Kudlow says that the coronavirus is contained and that Americans should stay at work. I can't believe it. That's what he says. Paul, what are your thoughts about the coronavirus?
It's obviously way, way too late. The decision for this was in January. It was up to the President of the United States, and he decided that the stock market price, the value of the stock market, was more important than stopping international flights. And now, when you watch the stock market, this is a vote of no confidence in the President and that decision he made, and that he's going to be suffering the political repercussions of this. The Democrats, of course, being naive and foolish, didn't position themselves back in February to be highly critical and vociferous in their critique of Donald Trump back then, so they could have it on the books that they were for quarantining the country, or at least keeping flights away. And so ultimately, he is going to pay for this.
Well, it's kind of a double-edged sword on this one. You're right. He should have taken precaution, but again, he needed this. You're right. He worried more about Wall Street bringing down the numbers to restart the economy versus the people themselves. And the Democrats, if they can get those numbers up higher, and we're only looking at 22 deaths right now for the entire country, which is, 307, 308 million people. If they can get this thing up much, much higher, they'll use it to their benefit. Like I said, never let a good crisis go to waste. They'll use it against Donald Trump, saying, well, you risked, you played Russian roulette with this. You should have done better. You should have known. You should have stopped this and this, and now this thing's out of control, and you're responsible for it. I mean, they're not done yet. I mean, they failed on every attempt to take down Donald Trump, and I'm not batting for the guy because I don't like him. Personally, I don't like Donald Trump. I'll give him credit where he's due, and I'll certainly point out where he's making mistakes. But if he seriously wanted to stop this in his tracks, he would have prevented all those planes from coming in from the infected areas, turn them around, refuel the plane, and head them back in the direction where they came from. And he didn't do that. You said that Wall Street was more important. You're absolutely correct. A wise comment. Wall Street was much more important.
And the last note before I go is just that, with 700 confirmed cases now in the United States and 22 deaths, that seems like it's somewhere about 3.5%. All right. And that's a huge number of, if it becomes that, half the country's infected, that's 150 million, and it's 3.5%. Right.
So
you're talking about at least 1.5 million people dead.
Paul, now you keep saying dead. I mean, you're calling crisis dead already. These people are already dead. Just because you get it doesn't mean you're going to die. We know there's two different strains. You're counting out, Paul. You're counting out the regular flu itself.
I know, but a normal flu is 70,000 dead typically in a year. We're getting skewed numbers here because Donald Trump told us between 36,000 and 69,000 deaths per year. I mean, they can't even get the number right. Right, but
so you're getting maybe some flu deaths that are going to be thrown on the stack of a coronavirus death, which is not correct.
Yeah, but I'm just saying at the existing rate, even what's happening in Italy now, and if you look at the early numbers, it seems as though that people who contact the disease, the mortality rate, and that includes the elderly, of course, we're not separating them, is still about 3%. And that's what I'm saying. This is no normal flu. This is no normal flu.
Paul, 3%.
I understand 3% of 300 million.
Odds getting in your car. You got greater odds getting in your car, driving to point B and getting killed in a car accident.
Unless you're elderly, and that's my point. And if you're 3%,
I mentioned that elderly and comorbidities, those people are more vulnerable, but they're vulnerable just as much to the COVID-19 as they are the regular flu.
No, that's not true, and that's my point. That's my point. If you go by the existing numbers,
you're
there's
going
700
by existing
dead.
government
There's
numbers,
700
Paul.
dead. There's
Paul,
700
you're buying into numbers. You're buying into government lies again on numbers.
No, listen, they're saying right now, this goes to Italy too. All these different countries have a similar. Like
You
if
just
you look
threw,
at
you just threw 700 people now infected, and I have yesterday's, unless it went up 201 in the last 24 hours, I got 564, and it just came to me yesterday before I did my broadcast on John's show.
Yeah, well,
you see the numbers? It's a numbers game, Paul. It's a numbers game.
Let me just explain one more time, though. 700 people, 22 dead. That's about 3%. And this is similar like what's happening in Italy, 3%. 3% of half of the American population becomes infected, expect 1.5 million dead. That's not a normal flu.
Well, where was that article I pulled? It said 15 million dead.
Well, that's way more than 3%.
You see what I'm saying? It's the numbers that get you fearful to comply, right. Paul. Don't fall for it.
Gentlemen, both of those numbers are out there in stores. They really are. I've seen them both, including the 15 million. Paul, very quickly, what is your greatest fear about the coronavirus? Is it supply chain? Is it death? What is it? No, it's the death of the old people I know. Yeah. I'd like to have them around for a few more years. I like these people. That's what it is. Well, thank you. Not only that, but they are the knowledge base that the millennials are lacking. Yeah. Yeah. Paul, thanks so much. Don't be a stranger. Steve, thank you for calling in.